It's official. DeMar DeRozan is a Sacramento King. Over the weekend, the Bulls finalized a sign-and-trade deal that sent DeMar DeRozan to Sacramento, bringing back 2 second-round picks and Chris Duarte. Let's break down the trade, find out what it means for the Bulls, and how Chris Duarte fits into the future of the team. What's up, guys? I'm Ross. Welcome back to the channel. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. But without further ado, let's just kind of dive right into it. So yeah, the Bulls traded DeMar DeRozan in a sign-and-trade to the Kings. In return, the Bulls bring back Chris Duarte, 2 second-round picks, and of course, our classic Bulls legend, cash considerations. Jerry Reinsdorf's favorite player. This trade, it's giving the Kings the ability to bolster their lineup. I know that they've been looking maybe at bringing in Zach LaVine, maybe looking at bringing in a couple other players. They end up here with DeMar DeRozan. His experience is going to add a lot to a young team. With De'Aaron Fox, 2 of the best clutch scorers in the entire NBA. They're going to be fun to watch at the end of games. For DeRozan, I've mentioned this in my last video, but I'll go through it again, man. DeRozan was a great player for the Bulls for 3 years. Obviously, the team around him wasn't always cohesive. There were injuries. The front office was sometimes hesitant to make moves. So I won't put all the blame on DeRozan for some of the shortcomings that the team had while he was in Chicago. I think he was a hardworking player. He helped develop some of the young players on the team. He coached up Ayo, he coached up Dalen Terry, he coached up Patrick Williams. He was a great locker room leader, and I just cannot speak to how much I enjoyed watching DeMar DeRozan play basketball in Chicago for 3 years. He made the Bulls fun again in 2021-22. Even when Lonzo Ball went down, like, DeRozan was still one of the top scorers in the NBA. He had the back-to-back New Year's Eve, New Year's Day game winners. So DeMar DeRozan, forever a Bull. Thank you for everything you did for Chicago. Best of luck in Sacramento. So let's talk about what this means for the Bulls lineup. You're taking out a crucial part of the Bulls offense, truly a primary ball handler. The Bulls, honestly, their best player for the last 3 years has been DeMar DeRozan. So in terms of rebuilding, the rebuild is here, folks. It is firmly here. We are in the midst of a rebuild in Chicago. It remains to be seen what the future looks like for Zach LaVine. But without DeMar DeRozan, you're putting the ball in the hands of Josh Giddey, 21-year-old point guard that you traded for this offseason. You're putting the ball in the hands of Kobe White, the guy that you re-signed last offseason and was a most improved player candidate this past year. So you have a lot of options here in terms of who's handling the ball. Obviously, Zach LaVine is going to be, if he's on the team. So this is an opportunity here for the Bulls front office to assess what they want the offense to look like going forward. Offensively, it felt like at times the Bulls were trying to force 2 different play styles together with DeRozan and LaVine. DeRozan being that dominant mid-range ISO scorer, and Zach LaVine being a good 3-point shooter who can play well off ball. I think should be the goal, is building kind of an offensive philosophy that is predicated around driving and kicking, right? Getting players who can drive the lane, kick the ball out for 3. That does kind of bring us to Chris Duarte and kind of what role he might be able to play. He was drafted 13th overall by the Pacers in 2021, but he did come into the league at 24 years old. So while he hasn't been around for a long time, he is not necessarily a young player. He did have an impressive rookie season. He was, I think, all rookie second team, if I recall correctly. He averaged 13 points per game. He did face some injuries in his second season, and I think overall he's been kind of a on and off player. If you look at his basketball reference page, you're going to notice that his scoring has gone down each season in the league. That's partially due to the injuries, partially due to the team around him changing. Obviously, the Kings got better, and they didn't necessarily need to go with the younger, less developed player when they had so much firepower. He has the potential to become a positive 3-and-D player. He has shooting ability. He has defensive skills. He had those coming into the league. He was a good defender. Hopefully we can keep developing that shot. The Bulls have Peter Patton on the coaching squad, who helped Kobe White. He helped Ayo Dosunmu. He helped Patrick Williams. He's helped quite a few players get their shot under a little more consistency. So maybe we can see the same thing with Duarte. So I think sending DeRozan off for this season does mean we are in full rebuild mode. I think That has been made very clear by the front office. What hasn't been made clear, though, is kind of who we're rebuilding around and what the rebuild will consist of, specifically in regards to Zach LaVine. It doesn't seem clear what the future holds for LaVine, just because his value is so low right now. The Bulls did bring back 2 second-round picks in this trade. I have seen some rumors that maybe the Bulls want to attach those second-round picks to Zach LaVine to try to send him somewhere else. I would hate to see the Bulls have to give up assets to trade LaVine. Ideally, you would be able to get a first-round pick for Zach LaVine or some kind of young player and salary matching. So that's kind of why I keep bringing up the idea of like what the offense is going to look like this season, because I feel like maybe it's worthwhile to keep Zach LaVine on the roster to try to rebuild his trade value. So that maybe you could convince a team at the trade deadline to send you some assets for LaVine instead of us having to send the assets out to get LaVine off the roster. So that's kind of where my head is at. I think that this is a team in flux right now. They're going to need to take some time to find what their new identity is going to be, because DeMar DeRozan for so long was the true closer for this team. If we needed a bucket, it was DeMar down the stretch. So the identity for this team is going to change. I think it's an opportunity here now that you don't have DeRozan on the roster to maybe give Zach LaVine the ball and say, hey, go play your game. Let's see what happens in the first half of the season. Maybe we find him a trade before the trade deadline. And beyond that, into the future, I think you start creating that offensive system, that offensive philosophy that caters to the play style of guys like Patrick Williams, guys like Kobe White, guys like Ayo Dosunmu, who play well in transition, who can break down a defense, who can drive and kick. And Chris Duarte is a part of that as a three-point shooter. Because it was a sign and trade, DeRozan was able to get that contract from the Kings. It wasn't any kind of like big return for the Bulls. That hopefully would be the LaVine trade, as we keep hypothesizing about what kind of return the Bulls could get. It was always supposed to be the LaVine trade that got them a nice haul. And let's not even talk about, had they traded DeRozan at the trade deadline last season or even the season before, probably could have gotten a pretty decent haul of picks and or players back. It hurts to think about that. The Bulls traded 2 of their best players this offseason, and all we got back were Josh Giddey, Chris Duarte, and 2 second-round picks. Not a great return for Alex Caruso and DeMar DeRozan, and based on what we're hearing, won't be a great return for Zach LaVine if he's traded in the next few weeks. I personally don't think it's going to go down like that. As I've said, I think the Bulls will try to rehab his value a little bit and get something more in return for him. So to sum this all up, I think the trade of DeRozan leaving the Bulls in general, because he was an unrestricted free agent. They didn't have to do a sign and trade necessarily, but DeRozan is able to go to a good team in Sacramento. I'm happy for him. I hope he wins. I hope he continues to have a great career. And we get to move forward with the rebuild in Chicago, which means start scouting Cooper Flagg for 2025. Start scouting Cam Boozer for 2026. Once again, we're going to be back at the bottom of the league. I did see a couple people pointing out some good thoughts on Twitter. Shout out Mark K. Hoops. He made a good point that like even if you're getting rid of DeRozan and Caruso, they're still kind of in the same boat, fighting for a play-in spot. I do think that the LaVine trade is going to happen at some point. So I do think that this is still a full-scale rebuild. We're just kind of in the beginning portions of it. This is the early portion. There's more to come. There's more to still happen on this team. But for now, I think you send DeRozan out, you bring Duarte in. It's an obvious sign to the rest of the league that we are tanking. And for the future, you have to start to wonder what other young players can the Bulls attract to the team if they're going to have to give up an asset to trade Zach LaVine. How are they going to get more draft capital to bring in more young players to really solidify the rebuild? So there's more to come. Like I said, I think that if you're going to do a rebuild, this is only the beginning. So let's see what happens. I'm excited to see how DeRozan plays in Sacramento. I'm going to be following him for the rest of his career. I'm going to be a DeRozan fan no matter what. So excited to see how he plays in Sacramento with the Kings. And we'll see if Duarte is really in the long-term plans for the Bulls. He's had that lackluster career so far, but there is potential here for the Bulls to develop his shot and get him to come in and play as a 3-and-D kind of player. So those are my thoughts, guys, on what the Bulls did over the weekend, trading DeMar DeRozan to the Sacramento Kings. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit like and subscribe. I'll be covering the rest of the Bulls offseason and into next season, as I always do. So make sure to follow me at Shy Sports Ross on all the platforms, and we will talk again very soon.